Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chris Schultz with FridayNightVictors.com. This is our podcast at Friday Night Victors. Today is March 14th. Seems a little strange to be doing some high school football talk, but these are, for lack of a better term, some strange times here in America and around the world. Due to the coronavirus, we don't have any professional sports. We don't have any high school championships going on this weekend. We don't have March Madness. Everything's been canceled because of the virus, and I know it's a tough time, and we thought we would try and get something out there for football fans, especially local football fans who follow the 16 teams that we cover on Friday Night Victors. I am flying solo today, but I have talked to Gary Hoff, and we're going to get together this week, and we're going to try and do as many podcasts as we can, as long as people are interested in listening and get talking about, the 2020 upcoming high school football season. Maybe talk a little bit about 2019. We're going to try and have some special guests on, just to trying to find a way to get high school football out in the forefront, and maybe hopefully we can get people's minds off of what is going on. And so anyways, here I am flying solo. I am in my home office here, and hopefully the sound is good. I think it's pretty good. I tested it out and gonna try and fly from here, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about last season. It was a really, really good year for Friday Night Victors teams, kind of on a upper level. Last season, probably the top team that we covered were the Milan Big Reds. They were the Huron League champs. They were undefeated in league play, and had their first 9-0 season in quite some time. And obviously there was the St. Mary Catholic Central Falcons. Their only blemish was to the Milan Big Reds, but they did go on to win a Division VI state championship. And it was exciting to follow them along the way. But here, what I'm going to do is I'm kind of going to recap a little bit of the season. So, I'm going to kind of do this alphabetically. It just seems the way to do things. But the Airport Jets, they made a return to the playoffs in 2019. They hadn't made the playoffs since 2012. They finished 6-4 overall. They were led by Jacob Pack, who was an all FNV performer last year, and he is returning. And so kind of expect some big things from the Jets to maybe continue. They do lose some people to graduation, but they also return a lot of very, very good players. Next, we had the Bedford Kicking Mules, who finished 6-4 overall. They finished second in the SEC Red. It was a weird season because they brought in a new coach, Mike Vickers, who was a seasoned veteran who came from the state of Ohio, and I don't know if they quite had the season they expected, but they drew Martin Luther King, a perennial high school powerhouse, and they lost to them in the playoffs. After the season, Vickers stepped down, and they're bringing in a new coach, John Phillips. He's been at Bedford for quite some time. He's a veteran assistant of 24 years. He does return some very good players. We have all FNV defensive lineman Joel Rand, as well as kicker Deegan Garcia. So they do have some players back. It'll be interesting to see how they fare coming up in the 2020 season. Next is Gibraltar Carlson. They finished 6-4 overall, fourth in the Down River League. They lost to Riverview in the first round of the playoffs. Gone is Jack Jarmo, the legendary coach from SMCC, and he had coached the last 3 seasons at Carlson. They also lose Ian Stewart, who was an all FNV player, Division I football player. He is headed to Michigan State University. And in is their athletic director, Dan Kelflesh. It's going to be an interim tag. He's going to take over a team that returns 16 letter winners there at Carlson. Dan was the head coach for 12 seasons at Huron. He had a pretty good career there. Led them to the semifinals in 2014 to where they lost to eventual champion Orchard Lake St. Mary's. If you know anything about what football was like at Huron before he got there, it was just not good, for lack of a better way of describing it. Next, we have the Dundee Vikings. Dundee finished up the season at 5-5 overall. They did qualify for the playoffs for the first time since 2012. They dropped a playoff game, a tight playoff game, to Dearborn Heights Robichaud. Just not too long ago here, and I guess it was February, Coach Kyle McElvaney stepped down. There currently is a search on to find a replacement for Coach McElvaney. The Vikings do return all FNV defensive end Ty Schroeder. Had one of the better seasons defensively in Viking football history. So he returns for the Vikings. Next, we got the Erie Mason Eagles. Erie Mason finished 2-7 overall. They were 0-7 in the LCAA. This year, they make a big move over to the Tri-County Conference. I think this is a good move for the Eagles. The LCAA is a very, very tough conference. I think this will be more of maybe a favorable schedule for the Eagles going over to the Tri-County Conference. They do have all FNV quarterback Noah Boudry returning. He will be arguably the best player in the Tri-County Conference in their first season there. Look for big things from the Eagles this year as they transition over to the TCC. Next, we have the Flat Rock Rams. Flat Rock finished 3-6 overall. They kind of had one of those seasons that you thought they may have ended up with a better record, but I think, the Huron League was pretty doggone tough last year. And this year they're going to have to replace all FNV performer Karan Clayton. They also have to replace Ravion Davis, who, the stats he put up, he was very deserving of an award from us, but we just had so many good quarterbacks. But he had, statistically, maybe one of the best seasons that anybody's ever had at Flat Rock High School in the game of football. They do return a very good two-way player in Joseph Sonarski. So, I look for Flat Rock to probably rebound a little bit and probably be a different type team. They were had a couple of stars last year, but expect the Rams to be competitive once again. Next is the Groseal Red Devils. Groseal finished 2-7 overall under veteran coach John Bodner. They do lose 2 very, very good players, all FNV linebacker Johnny Blanzy. He also played on the offensive line. They also lose Josh Zeman, who was an offensive lineman and linebacker as well. Seems like those two have been there forever. And but with that said, the Red Devils do return kind of everything Joey Pizzo. This is a guy who can run the ball, catch the ball, kick the ball, return. I would expect Groseal to make somewhat of a turnaround here. They kind of have a every other year run to the playoffs right now. They missed the playoffs, obviously, in 2019. I wouldn't be surprised if they turn it around and make a run at the playoffs in 2020. Next, from the Huron League, we got the Huron Chiefs, who finished 4-5 overall. They do return all FNV receiver Isaac Smith. He is one of the better athletes that I've seen come through Huron in a long time. The Chiefs were pretty close to having a solid season last year. They lost by 1 point to the eventual league champions in Milan. They lost, I believe it was 22-21. They were up 14-0 on SMCC before falling in that game. They have a really good quarterback, another quarterback who threw up really good numbers in amongst the teams we cover, in Austin Meyer. So I expect big things from the Huron Chiefs in 2020. Next is the Ida Blue Streaks. Ida finished 4-5 and missed the playoffs for the first time in 6 seasons. I fully expect Coach Jeff Potter to get the Blue Streaks back headed towards the playoffs in 2020. He'll build that team around Owen Sampson. Next, we have the Jefferson Bears. Jefferson finished 3-6 in 2019, and that was after having gone winless the 2 previous seasons. They had actually lost 19 in a row. Gene Janot heading the turnaround over there. I think they can continue in the same direction in 2020. Next, you have the Milan Big Reds, who I mentioned earlier. They were the Huron League champs. They finished 11-1 overall. They lost to Country Day in the playoffs. They do have a big loss in Tristan Hines, who was the Friday Night Victors overall player of the year. He is a guy who, once again, like the gentleman from Grosseal, it seems like he's been around forever. 4-year starter for the Big Reds. He is going to play his college football at Eastern Michigan University. Big Reds also lose all FNV lineman Sam Llewellyn, but they do return Kendrick McBride for veteran coach Jesse Hoskins' team. Next, you had Monroe. Monroe High kind of took a step back last year. 2019, they finished 3-6 after finishing 7-4, and the year before, where they had qualified for the playoffs. They do return all Friday Night Victor performers and wide receiver Tristan Panza, also Cross Jacobs, who was all FNV as well. He's an offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I expect Monroe to turn things around and wouldn't be surprised if they flipped that record the other way in 2020. Next up, we have the Riverview Pirates. The Pirates finished 8-3 overall. They were their 3rd straight playoff appearance down there in Riverview. They've also qualified for the playoffs 6 of the last 7 seasons. They do have to replace all FNV performers Garrett Vaneski and Christian Lopez. I will say this, right now they are my early favorite to win the Huron League. They played a lot of young players, especially a lot of sophomores. They return a lot of talent. I know they have a very good weight program over there. I expect the Pirates to be very good next season. Next, we got St. Mary Catholic Central. Like I said earlier, the Falcons were the Division VI state champions. They finished 12-1. Their lone loss was to the Milan Big Reds. They have to replace 22 seniors. I know one of their mottos over there is tradition never graduates. That's correct, but 22 seniors are graduating, and that does include Alex Morgan, who was an All-Stater. He was also our Friday Night Victors Offensive Player of the Year. They also lose the Defensive Player of the Year from Friday Night Victors in Sam Cousineau. They also lose Brendan Sloan, Nico Castiglione, and Wyatt Bergmoser. They were all FMV last season. With that said, I expect St. Mary Catholic Central to battle like they always do. They're well coached. They always have good football players over there. So, keep an eye out for them. Next, we got Summerfield. Summerfield finished 4-5 under first-year head coach Alex Lipka. They did graduate all FNV performer Brendan Defoe, but they do return quarterback Devin Albane. Albane was another one of the quarterbacks who just had a great year in our coverage area. They play in the Tri-County Conference. I'm sure they will be very, very competitive, especially with Devin there at quarterback, and then Coach Lipka, getting a little more comfortable in his second year as the head coach. Next, you have the Bobcats of Ottawa Lake Whiteford. They finished 5-5. They qualified for the playoffs for 8 straight years. Coach Jason Mensing will be back. They have all FNV performer Noah Ballman. With the Bobcats going 5-5 last season, in the previous 4 seasons they had gone 47-5, which had included a state title as well as a runner-up. So the fact that they made the playoffs and they were competitive, they had heavy graduation losses. I fully expect them to rebound, or if that's what you want to call it, there in 2020. They do have a very tough schedule. I know they have Blissfield and Ida the first 2 weeks of the season. So anyways, that's kind of a wrap-up. Look for Gary and I to get together this week and do another podcast. We're probably going to break down the teams a little bit more. We'll give you a bunch of players to look out for. I also have plans for a special guest. I already have at least one person committed to come on the show with me, and I'm sure I can get others. And one of the things I do want to throw out there is, I know obviously many of you who listen to the podcast, you obviously go to FridayNightVictors.com. We may look to expand a little bit this year. We're gonna see how it goes. We want to try and give the great coverage that we've given those 16 teams, but I've had a lot of inquiries from people saying, "Hey, why don't you cover this school? Why don't you cover that school?" And quite frankly, I'm open to doing that. But what I need is cooperation from the head coach, and then because we need information on these teams. We obviously do a lot of the research on our own, but it is a lot easier if we could pick up the phone or send an email and talk to someone. A lot of times we don't deal with the head coach at all. What we have is we have a statistician from one of the schools, and they can get us information on the team, and we can kind of go from there. I mean, Gary, myself, and Frank, we're all huge football fans, so we get a lot of the information because we do our homework. But if you're with a school, that would like to be covered in this and want to see us expand, make sure you reach out to us. We can make that happen. I am going to ask you to follow us on our podcast. You can subscribe. I guess that's what you do. You can, pretty sure you can find us on Google Play and iTunes. But anyways, I'm running a little long here, heading towards 20 minutes, but I appreciate you listening. But look for us again. We're going to try and talk high school football as much as we can until we can get, past what's going on here in the United States. And, hopefully soon we can get back to hopefully the spring sports will pick up as soon as we come back in early April. I'm hoping that's what happens. And then obviously, we'd like to see the NBA playoffs pick up, the NHL playoffs, and hopefully we can get on to Major League Baseball. And and here's the thing: in these tough times with the coronavirus, it's not just about you and me. It's about us. And when I say us, collectively as a nation, it's been nice to see how this country has rallied, and I don't want to get political here, but it's nice to see the two parties coming together to pass legislation, as well as the president declaring a state of emergency. And my hope is by staying home here pretty much for the most part, that we can just kind of all get through this. So anyways, I appreciate you listening, and look for more podcasts to come here in the very near future. Thanks for listening. FridayNightVictors.com. I'm Chris Schultz.